How art thou? Oh, puppy. I just give it a few seconds because sometimes I've noticed that even if I wait a little while and then just start speaking, there's a little bit shaved off the front of the live. Do you want to go outside? I might now need to excuse myself anyway and put the dog out. Here, come on, he's fine. He's fine. Riveting stuff. So, okay, as usual, I'm watching every day as much as I can on two very different court cases, I guess you could say, even though there's some really similar themes. So there's a lot to catch up on, and there's a lot of things that I'm not really responding in depth to, even though I could. And it's a bit frustrating, but you know, there's a lot of commentary going on. There's a lot of streaming of audio and of audio visuals for Leteica Stauch and then for Laurie Cox. Lots of commentary, so you know, really it's not required by anybody that I give a response, but of course here on my own Humanimal channel I can be a little bit more bold and outspoken, because it is really rude to endanger a channel's existence because one can't manage their outrage and things like that, okay? And I think there's a way to comment about cases, and there's a way perhaps not, unless you're on your very own channel, and then you can be as outspoken as you so wish. With regards to Laurie Cox Valo Daybell's case, it's interesting because I guess the Stauch and Cox cases have both been at an interesting parallel in where they're at, because they've been hearing testimony from cast, so they are hearing from the FBI teams that analyze data from telephones and other systems, and they marry everything up and they work out who was where, when, with whom they are communicating, what they might possibly be doing in relation to evidence found at these places at certain times and all of that sort of thing. And you know, that's something that's been running parallel with those cases at the moment. But I guess, you know, what we've had in Laurie Cox Valo Daybell's court trial to date are two really passionate moments, and these have been recordings that have been played, recordings of phone calls, both of them jail phone calls, with Laurie Cox on one end of the telephone and a member of her immediate family on the other end of the telephone. Excuse me while I wet my whistle. For Laurie today, everyone's been wondering what type of witness is Summer Shiflett going to be, because Summer Shiflett, you know, she's been embroiled with Laurie's life and lies all her life as the younger sister, looking up to a person that has a very strong personality, a very strong sense of self and ego, who is very overbearing and controlling, and that, you know, typically in families, whether they're as dysfunctional as Laurie's family or whether they're just a little bit more quote unquote normal, but there is someone in there that is a real sort of a burr in the family structure, someone that's upsetting and seemingly more selfish and that sort of thing. But the Cox family, and it seems to be quite broadly stretching into the extended family, you know, we know are dysfunctional, and even families that have a whole lot of strong people with very bizarre ideas that really just go out and live their own life, they are susceptible to acquiescing to narcissists so that they are not on the other end of the wrath, or they just take things at face value. It's just easier, or someone seems so confident, or, you know, they have a lot of fun around this person. If they don't go along with this person, life is extremely uncomfortable and difficult, and there's a lot of turmoil for the whole family. There's a lot of, you know, I disown you, and lots of rocking back and forth, and it's very, very toxic. And that's, you know, the role that Laurie would play would be, you know, very much a take control role, where she's probably been have you ever studied birth order and everything like that? It's interesting to look at her birth order as well. We've got Stacey, then Alex, then Adam, then Laura, who died at 6 weeks old, Laurie, and then Summer. You know, she's not the baby of the family. She's the oldest surviving daughter, except she was young enough when her older sister Stacey was having her daughter Melanie. She was at that age, I think it was, sorry, I'm not making sense. There's a photo of her with a little child on the knee, and I think it might be Melanie Boudreau. And it was 6 years after that Stacey died, and that did leave Laurie in the older daughter, middle child sort of role. And people always remember her, it's coming out, as being very dynamic, but very forward, very sophisticated for her age. Actually such a contradiction, because, you know, go to the church for the first half of proceedings, go out and get some fast food, go back in for the end, going out with boys, being very sexually aware very early on, perhaps 13 or 14, talking about effing and that type of thing, being very aware of her physical body and the value of your physical body. You know, it's you know, it's awful. You've probably seen on Hidden True Crime the interview with cousin Megan, you know, who made a statement that she was drawn along with Laurie to go out on a double date because Laurie wanted to go out with a boy. Laurie wanted to hang out with the boy at a golf club, you know, golf course in the middle of the night, make out. And then on the way home, you know, they ran over a cat and Laurie laughed. They did it on purpose, you know. This is sociopathic stuff. And Laurie's probably just had her first taste of being rejected, being disregarded, being told that no, No, I'm not just going along with you. I'm not listening to whatever bullshit you're spinning. So in this phone call, just like with Colby, who just really laid it on the line, and, this is the day after the children were found in Chad's backyard. That's when Colby made his call, and he just outright says, "You murdered my siblings." Summer is equally destroyed and betrayed, and they sound very similar. So at first I wasn't sure who's crying, but it was Summer, very distraught, and Laurie's just trying on the same old bullshit, right? Look, it's okay. I know what's going on, so that's all right. You don't know, just shit she's done her whole entire life. And this is what I said after hearing the call with Colby was, it's actually, I don't know what's worse, the fact that he's deluded into thinking that his mother had a sudden change after Chad Daybell, or that, not realizing that she's always been this terrible, manipulative person who just gets what she wants when she wants it. And she's very underhanded about it. And she must win. She must be respected. She must get first choice. She must be chosen first. She must not be rejected. She must be able to call the shots. You must not humiliate her. You must not degrade her or downgrade her in any way. It is not acceptable, and she will make you pay. Okay? It doesn't matter who you are. And Colby just, of course, can't see that, because manipulators and people that wear masks, well, they're very good at wearing masks, aren't they? Until these masks are well and truly just ripped off and burned. And that must have been a very cold time for Laurie when Summer has made that call finally, after her mother Janice has perhaps coerced Summer to go along with the narrative that Laurie would never, etc., etc. And remember Janice Cox lying about a FaceTime call with JJ well after we know he had been murdered. But this is the kind of loyalty, misguided, that people in the lives of these narcissists, this is what they give them. This is just how it goes. This is the depths of it. And, you're just really seeing it in action here. So, that was really, really difficult. I imagine there were a lot of people very distraught when they were listening to that. And Laurie, with no longer that just, okay, I have to give you this blanket benefit of the doubt. You act haughty, and you say because you said so, and I believe it, whether it makes sense or not. That's basically the bottom. Anywho, let's move on to Leteica Stauch, because of course I woke up early this morning, and the stream was in full motion that I was that had my notification on for. I was listening. I've been listening to a lot of Leteica Stauch's, or watching too, isn't it? Watching a lot on Another Day in the Car with Jules. And so this witness, the first witness, that is a medical officer witness, I guess you could say. We're all waiting with bated breath about this. So I can be a bit more open here, as I was just saying, because you can't on someone else's channel. You have to sort of mind your P's and Q's. Christine Mohr, Mohr, she's now based in Kansas at a large prison as part of the largest global money-sucking network of, service providers. What's it called? Wake Up or something like that. Anyway, I've had rants about government-funded, non-government agencies before, and the lack of standard of care. Everything is a tick, tick, tick on the board. Keep that funding rolling, and the people at the top are millionaires, multi-millionaires, and they're working the system, and people who work there, there's such a tier of who's able to perform well, who's not, who's even trying, who's there for what reason. Most of them going out of their minds because they're just so shackled by the organisation that they're hired by. But Christine Mohr, oh my gosh, I mean, honestly, yeah, when I say more is less, I mean less would have been more when it comes to Christine Mohr. She's an unprepared, evasive, vague practitioner who makes gross generalizations. Gross generalizations, is belligerent, and is remiss in her job. She doesn't fulfill basic follow-through. She doesn't gather resources, and she clearly doesn't prepare for her moment in court. Sure, she's only been a subpoenaed witness for 2 or 3 cases, whereas obviously some of the people that are testifying in these cases that we're following, who work for the FBI, who are special agents for the FBI, some of them have attended court 30, 40, 50 times, sometimes just flying straight in from giving testimony in other cases. Like one of the FBI cast witnesses had flown in from Phoenix to Colorado the day before. So what sort of duty of care do prisoners get? Well, I guess it depends if you're in prison too. If you're in prison or jail, according to less is more, when you're in jail, when you make disclosures about sexual abuse, molestation when you're a child, that type of thing, because they don't know when they might lose you out of the system, they don't begin to offer you any support. Now, she says it like treatment. We don't offer treatment. What this basically means is we don't offer you any support to do with this, and we'll probably be quite reticent about it. Maybe it really won't affect us empathically. Maybe we just make a generalized assumption that you're trying to manipulate us. But either way, if you're just in jail being held whilst you're waiting for competency treatments or testing, preliminary hearings, your actual court trial. We won't start treatment because heaven only knows. I mean, that could be really traumatic. If we start delving into things and bringing things up. I mean, it's not like a prison setting and all the distress and everything of being arrested, perhaps falsely. It's not like that's going to be affecting you at all anyway, is it? I mean, it's all the better that we just leave well alone. So what else did more or less go on to do? Well, she decided to withhold information that she had, that she thought she could be a little bit tricksy about, because she thought, well, I'm talking about what's being told to me and when. not what knowledge I was armed with when I went into talk to Stark. So this is all a little bit cagey and a little bit like, hey, woman, are you just there to be professional? Answer questions to the best of your ability. Do your job. Do what is required by the Court of Colorado, by the state of Colorado, by the people of America who rely on the court system for justice. You can't help thinking that she's got some type of, what's the expression, agenda or something. Anywho, she should have been better prepped by the prosecutorial team. She may be very busy. She does work in Kansas. She's a director. She's a clinical director of, I think it is she's in charge of the care and assessment of 230 odd prisoners who are in Kansas State Prison for sexual offences, and she's very busy, so she might not have had time to read the notes, but she certainly had them in front of her. But she kind of gets a little bit exposed by, is it Will Cookie? Because she first assessed Leteica Stauch on the 5th of March. This is when T had been transported in a civilian-type car from South Carolina. I mean, is it like Colorado is just looking for trouble? I don't know. Perhaps they thought that it was too dangerous to fly T on a commercial flight, and perhaps they didn't think that a possible murderer of a minor child didn't deserve a chartered flight from China to Colorado. I mean, how much would that have cost? Probably not much. Slap. And this car ride, it's a night and a day. It really is a night and a day. I imagine no one on this trip was really getting any sleep, and it just didn't seem to be a very secure way. Was there not some sort of proper vehicle, like what we would call a paddy wagon, that could have been fitted out in some way with Stauch in the back secure? It's like in this armor guard van sort of thing, and then with guards driving and with maybe some visuals. I mean, look, who knows? I mean, America's clearly just like some sort of third world country, so they can't afford these sort of transport vehicles to be available in every state, clearly. Who knows? But on the 5th of March, T's come in to, is it El Paso? No, Pablo. And she'd be a freaking wreck. Anyone would. Now, this isn't compassion for a murderer. Don't start giving BS about this, but people need to know how to look at things a little bit more clearly, with a little bit more blankness, if that makes sense. Just look at the facts as they are, okay? Because so that they can be held up to account and stand up in court, and for nothing that they've done have anything fall over and let any guilty person go free. Things need to be done in a really particular way. But anywho, so 5th of March, which what I'm meaning to say is prisoners, people under suspicion, people arrested, they still should be treated particular ways. They have not gone through their court process. They are not found guilty already. They are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Now, before that, yeah, sure. Hey, no. you can be assumed guilty, but they have to be treated in a very specific way. And even people accused of killing a minor child. Christine Mohr, who is a clinical psychologist. To become a clinical psychologist, you do need to do 2,000 hours of, I think this, practical, and you pass all sorts of exams. And I mean, it's a learned position. It's an accomplished position. I loved how she was asked, and what did you do, Christine, to become a doctor? Yes, because we all know about Dr. T, don't we, and her educational degree. She probably got 25, 30 minutes with somebody. I doubt that it was even up to the 40 minutes, because there was just this vague amount of time given. And I feel like it was then probably at the lowest end of the spectrum, because that should be in the notes. So she's in a cell. She's got 2 deputies guarding her because she's high risk and she's dangerous. She's just, thrown a monster can at the guard en route. She's been reported to have been trying to hurt herself with her handcuffs, although Dr. Mohr says she didn't note any discernible damage. And she has this conversation with Leteica Stauch and determines, this prisoner doesn't report anything much other than generalized anxiety disorder. Didn't tell me about any sexual assaults in her past. Didn't tell me about being molested when she was a minor child. Didn't tell me if she was abused by her husband. Didn't tell me that she'd ever had any hospital stays. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe people need to be given a little bit of a benefit of a doubt and a little go easy on in the time that they first arrive into a facility. I don't think anybody, murderess or not, is going to tell very much to someone that's just standing in the doorway and is just going through the motions. Not a duty of care, but, some sort of duty of her, just duty of the drill, right? And so Mohr testifies later, it wasn't until, much later, maybe November, that, after she's been to the state psychiatric hospital for her, what do they call it, if you're, competent, for the competency testing and everything like that. It wasn't until after that she told me that she had been sexually assaulted as a child, and, she's basically saying, by this time I don't believe her, I'm not going to give her any treatment, it's all too late. But then Will Cook brings out that, well, actually it was in notes that you would have had available to you, Mrs. Mohr, that T had said upon arrival that, she's very triggered by thoughts of anything because she was sexually assaulted as a child, and etc., that she had PTSD and everything. But, Mohr is very evasive about everything. And it's like getting blood out of a stone. It's like she's taking everything personally rather than just having the integrity of the status of her role and of the responsibilities of her role. It's just crazy. Look, on the other hand, right, you can say, all right, so Leteica is saying that, when things such as sexual assault, molestation, being attacked, so, the R word, etc. When these things are talked of, discussed, when she thinks about it, this will trigger hallucinations, this will trigger some really bad experience for her, right? Well, okay, that's fair enough. But, okay, T, then what about what was happening to you? We didn't seem to see anything triggered to you when you were talking about Quincy and when you were talking about Eduardo Denver Omeletto. When you put the fact that you were bringing up those as part of a storyline, and you made up several different rape stories, and then when you're in the hospital for your sane, so sexual assault, for, where they go through and you are medically looked at and examined so that, trials for sexual assault can be brought to justice because they've got the physical evidence. Leteica, how do you explain saying, oh, I'll go and get my daughter because I won't do this unless she's in here? I mean, number one, how traumatizing for your daughter. What person in their right mind would do that? But, she's clearly convincing or just bullying enough that they go, okay, go and get Harley. She's gone out to the parking lot, maybe even called Harley. Maybe Harley wasn't even at the hospital. But she's scarpered. She's left. So she hasn't had her SANE examination. And you think, well, that takes a level of comprehension, doesn't it? That maybe someone's telling porkies. Now, is Dr. Lewis going to be able to come in and, break everything down and explain everything that T's been doing as being, a depersonalized or derealized or dissociated persona? Maybe, but there's a lot there that she has to get around. It was quite disappointing with Christine Mohr, really, when, she is seeing Leteica. Now, this is basically just to check up. This is what I believe, these jail systems are operated like. I mean, I think there are probably beautiful, compassionate people working in every place, but they're machines. They're just machines, and you're just something that has to be managed so that everything runs smoothly and people collect their money and people can get their wages, and the state can say that they're managing things and everyone can go home at the end of the day. So don't fantasize that because there are clinicians and people that go and talk to people, that people are getting any sort of care or duty of care, or people noticing their state of mind and really giving a shit or attributing it to the right thing. Mohr has been told by Leteica at one point that, well, actually, I was in a facility in Canada for 90 days being treated. When, at the start of Mohr starting to see Leteica whilst in jail, she's been told, okay, I've got no history of anything other than the GAD. I haven't been hospitalized for anything. I haven't been sort of treated for anything. I'm not on medications for anything other than anxiety. That may or may not be the case. I mean, not everyone's going to open up, and maybe not in that situation. Mohr likes to generalize that, well, most people do. Most people are doing that situation. They've got no trouble saying it. So therefore, but did she try and find out, well, what facility this was that Leteica was in Canada? I mean, is Dr. Lewis going to say, well, this is how Leteica explains Alaska to herself? Or, some of her other identity personas explain it. I mean, I don't know. Alaska was a failure for Leteica, for her marriage, personally, for her family, because, she hated it. She shit-stirred her way through the military base, and she made some really serious allegations. Now, was Dr. Lewis going to be able to say, well, this is the way that someone with DID would explain some sort of these absences, not being in Alaska, but maybe she was in a Canadian facility. I mean, what sort of conversation did Mohr have to try and understand that. So maybe she could discredit Leteica just purely through her notes and her understanding of her sessions with Leteica when it did come to the time of the trial. The time is now. But, this is the cookie cutter issue, isn't it? So too bad for any women that are, suffering trauma, have suffered sexual abuse, might really then become extremely distraught and even more vulnerable when they're in prison, because let's face it, a lot of women that are in prison are extremely marginalized and vulnerable. And too bad. So you'll get someone that stands in your doorway or talks to you through your little window for 20 minutes, just wants to tick off that, tighten any knots in any sheets, or that, you're not talking to a sock puppet or something. And that's about the size of it. But, she did run through quite a few of the discussions that she'd had with T, and she saw her fairly regularly, even if it's just, put anything aside, any illusions aside, that, Coltrane's in the building when people are being spoken to. They're just checked on one by one, and they're a box that's ticked. Few notes are made. Reports are given by various people in the prison about them. Things are misinterpreted. I mean, who knows? But yeah, judged and generalized, hurried and harried, just some sort of feelings that I got about it all. Now, I think Leteica did get put on some medications at the state hospital, and afterwards she was opening up a lot more. Now, whether this is or not because sly old T is starting to formulate something, I don't know, but she's opening up a lot more to Mohr and saying some quite bizarre things. Do you mind if I just get some more cold water from the fridge in a minute? I really should have gotten more ready. She says about she might normally take a handgun going somewhere like the Garden of the Gods, but it felt like too much to handle at the time. I mean, is she implying or trying to imply that a handgun might have been too much of a what's the word when it's too much to be, she might not be able to control herself, sort of thing. I don't know, that was kind of weird. But she was kind of saying, I felt like it would be too much. It was all too stressful. So she didn't take her handgun as she normally would to the Garden of the Gods. You just want to know what's going through her head. Is she thinking, because I would have shot little Gannon right then and there. Just because I gave him 10 shots, she says, shots of Metamucil, she says she can handle 10 shots. I wonder how many shots Gannon managed to, wasn't it, T? But anyway, she starts talking a bit more events around Gannon's death. She's saying that she's replaying the week over and over. Replaying in her mind, why didn't she, help the police a lot more? Maybe again trying to hint at all the bullshit that, she's got some sort of secret information or, information that is just so hot and dangerous that if she talks to someone about it without being kept safe, it's better for her not to speak. Mohr says, she's creating stories. She's saying that she doesn't recall all the conversations that she was having at the time. And she talks about this guy, Andrew Womack. He's someone whose son died apparently and maybe was revived after 8 hours or something. And she's saying that she prays for Gannon. She's giving other prisoners scriptures. And she says that she really regrets going on the road off Highway 25. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty gross. When she's coming back from the state hospital, she's talking about, her diet needs not being met. She wants to, she's saying that she's celiac. I think she ends up getting a kosher diet. If you're asking for kosher meals, which every prisoner has the right to, I guess, I think you're going to get a much higher quality of food. So I kind of can't blame people, but, Mohr was sounding very dismissive about that. But Mohr did say that they did run some tests on T and didn't find that she was celiac, but that they are trying to work with her diet. And T said, well, you guys are in for a big lawsuit because you're not meeting my medical needs. Well, I don't believe that a prisoner of the state who's been found guilty, if you're found guilty, T, you're not going to be able to sue anybody. I think that might be how it works. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody. Around sometime in August, after her return in July, Mohr went to T's door, to a hole in the door, and looked in, and T's sitting there with a blanket over her head, saying she doesn't want to talk. And I think it's about this time that the doctor attests that Leteica volunteered to her that, look, I am going to start acting manic, I'm going to start pulling my hair out, and I'm going to start presenting with a different personality. Yeah, who knows? I don't know what to think, but yeah, she very well may have. I mean, she was writing, some probably quite bizarre letters, but she was writing letters to different YouTubers who have been able to compare notes and who have discovered that Leteica was telling them both all sorts of different porkies. So I imagine actually that aren't I rude? Because I'm just sitting in my kitchen here. Do I have cold water? Yes. I imagine that any any letter that T writes, it would be full of, trying to just introduce so many different themes, and probably trying to manipulate, probably trying to coerce, and probably trying to control and threaten. Yeah. Seems about the way she would operate. Yeah. Yeah, I just had notes here. I was just scrolling notes. Just about, the jail setting. It's really not a very appropriate place for women to be sort of going through their trauma, for anybody, for any person. But, Mohr is basically stated, women, you're just stuck with your trauma if you're in jail, because why would we start treating you? And yeah, that really doesn't seem right. You'd think that because there's a whole lot of women in jail who, with maybe a particular percentage of the jail population having some similar experiences, maybe they could run some groups or something. I don't know. That would probably make people vulnerable to bullying and coercion, I don't know, and all sorts of things. And yeah, but yeah, she's so generalizing. She's making so many generalizations about how people, inmates, they consistently act out and act up whenever there's anything to do with competency evaluations and everything. Now, sure, but that's not her judgment to make and make broad sweeping judgments about people, is it? Because isn't she there to assess everybody? Isn't that some sort of Hippocratic oath that maybe she takes? Okay, she's not a medical doctor because she's not a doctor of psychiatry, so she's not an MD, but this do no harm. I mean, people that go into these fields sometimes, yeah, we all know the trope, don't we, that they are quite damaged themselves, and that's why they go. And she's taken a very specific path, hasn't she? She's very ambitious. She's gone for some very powerful roles, taking the role in Kansas as this clinical director. She's staying within a certain sector. Now, maybe she's just really passionate and driven about helping prisoners and being of service to her country and everything that way. But, she's working in the private sector in one of the most brutal, foul sectors, the private prison system, privatized prison system. It actually doesn't, I don't know what it says about her character. I can't cast aspersions, can I? I shouldn't, because that would mean that I'm casting aspersions on quite a lot of people. But, considering the role that she is in, considering her attitudes about pedophilia, about how she sort of differentiates between, the types of her prisons that she's treating in Canvas, it leaves you in very little doubt about her disdain for women and sexual trauma that they have. Could be reading that wrong. Sorry, Mohr, if I am. But I'm not convinced of your professionalism as you presented in court. I could tell that you were confident enough, and I think I can see why now, because you're not just in this role that you were in when you were seeing Leteica. You've advanced and you've got some serious confidence of this type of speak and everything under your belt. But I think you've been exposed by Will Cook. You have misled in your testimony because it was spoken by T. Stauch when she first got into the prison. Sure, maybe not to you while you're just standing in the corner and she's freaked out and intimidated. Doesn't matter if she's guilty or not. Distressed, tired, overwhelmed, paranoid, whatever. You think, oh, just because she doesn't speak up to you, I mean, what's so warm and inviting about you that you think anybody in any situation is going to tell you the deepest, darkests? Even if they are compos mentis and realize it's in my best interest to be as open as possible because people need to know. Not everyone thinks like that. They don't want you to know, and it is hard. And even in the comfort of a therapy clinic that might have a nice view and buttery leather seats and a vaporizer and some piped quiet music or just gentle tranquility, it could take a long time to come out with anything, to talk about menopause, for example. So, let alone anything else, right? So, I don't know. It's all looking like, it could be easy for someone just to take advantage of the fact that, yeah, they know that they're just dealing with this public sector in regards to where Mohr was working before. So, T's saying that, stepfathers, this is in November, maybe anything to do with stepfather, triggers hallucinations, anything to do with sexual harassment and assault is triggering these hallucinations. Mohr is denying seeing signs of PTSD. And she says, yeah, look, any significant impairment, maybe they just can't diagnose it in jail. They just don't treat it, yeah. But T, okay, so Leteica, she's told these stories. Now, sure, she wanted some privacy to tell some of the RAPE stories. Why do I say that sometimes and spell it others? In some settings and then others not. And she's changed that story. But it's very hard to go past. I mean, her alters, I know it's crass to call it that because that is not how you really should talk about them. But, let's just use that. Her alters have been in control like an awful lot of the time then, haven't they? Are they making up the stories and then therefore realizing they need to get out? Because Leteica says she's brilliant. She wouldn't make up a story about Quincy, right? Because that's clearly bogus. Quincy, the wanted man who was actually in Mexico the whole time, which is probably where Leteica thought Gannon would end up. I think if the prosecution can focus directly enough on what T is saying about that, I think even if, it's tragic. She's saying that at 14 years old she was, mistreated by her stepfather who left 2 years later, or she left home 2 years later. When her brother, is it Dalton, was 2 years old. Is she trying to imply that that's actually her son? And then she's left. Look, we don't know, but has anyone run any DNA testing? Because he was there in Colorado. They're within their rights to test everybody's DNA that was with T at the time that Gannon was being moved around and taken out of state. Her brother, of course, is the one that cried the impassioned, "Why, Tisha?" And he didn't grow up with her, and he probably grew up with her, just admiring from afar, thinking that this older girl's got shit going on. She probably looked like she was having a lot of fun, was making things happen, right? But her world was crumbling. She had been in trouble her whole entire life. People are saying no, but we know there are instances of, antisocial behavior and violence and just general law breaking, okay? All which, if it starts early enough, all which would support an antisocial personality disorder diagnosis. I don't know. I think the most tricky thing for people to be around is borderline personality disorder. And yeah, perhaps that's where that's going. People just need to hang tight and wait for Dr. Lewis. Just be open-minded. Try to think about what's being put in front of you. There's a lot of slinging going on, and I can understand it from one hand, because in a way, because of her plea, she's basically saying she did it. And, and others are basically just saying, well, I don't believe that she didn't know exactly what she was doing. And they want her to fry for it. As much as we think we know the facts, we don't yet know anything. I am curious to see what Dr. Lewis comes up with. I'm interested to see what brain damage is there. I mean, it's interesting, you know, if you've got tinnitus like I have, well, you've got brain damage. Anyone can dissociate. You can have a psychotic episode in stress. I mean, T's just such a liar, though. I mean, it's just, isn't it? It's just, you know, it's just this intuition we have that she's a manipulator, a liar. But at the same time, we still don't know what is seriously wrong with her, what seriously might be wrong with her. And we have to wait and see. But I think, you know, leaving before the sane exam, it's quite telling, isn't it? Although everything can be explained away, can't it? Depending on what side you're on, what viewpoint you've got. Oh, that would be too triggering. It would be too difficult. It would be like being raped again. Well, you know, raped women have to go through these exams all the time, and they are confronting, and they do induce trauma of their own. But most units that are performing this, it is done in a very specific, careful, loving, concerned, compassionate way. And one would think that it would be a relief to have these things completed, right? Anywho, yeah, that's really it. I just wanted to say I'm not impressed with Mohr. She was playing too many games. She wasn't being forthcoming enough. It's too easy to find that she's withheld information, or she's making judgments that she shouldn't be making. She just needs to stick to giving out information, and even then she wasn't disclosing information, and she's being cagey, and she should be neutral. There should be no reason for her. She's just a witness for the state who has had contact and who should have information, and who just needs to relay that, whatever, and then just walk away. Okay, so it's nearly as if she's just got something inside her which is misogynistic. Did I say that? Bye.